it's easy to get jaded when you're in a big city like Chicago or New York, where not only is there a big vibrant scene, but you also have bands from all over the world stopping by on their tours. And I experienced this when I moved to Malaysia, where obviously we don't get as many bands coming through, and the local scene isn't quite as big as probably what you're used to in Chicago. And so it's one of those things, like you kind of don't realize what you have until it's taken away from you. I think your predictions are probably going to be accurate. I think when there's shows several times a week, people tend to take it for granted, but once everything is gone, it's only then that people will realize, like, oh wow, we had something special, and we could have something special again, hopefully.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And to your point as well, right? In big cities like Chicago or New York or whatever, there's an opportunity cost to every single show as well, right? So everyone who is potentially going to that show could have been doing a bunch of other stuff on any given day, where it's like, okay, well, I could go to this show here, but there's also 3 more shows literally happening the same night. And there are 6 more shows in the next 2 weeks that I could also go to. And I could go to this sports game, and I could go to this bar, and I could go to this other sports game, or I could, there's just so much stuff that people could be doing. So the opportunity cost impact, I think, is pretty high in major cities like that. And like you said, having a lot of that taken away, I think is potentially going to be focusing for people, and then also making people, at least short term, because I'm a little skeptical of long-term behavior change from folks, but potentially appreciate what's actually going on more.
I mean, in terms of long-term behavior change, I think people are starting to regard the pandemic as almost a 9/11 type event, where there was a pre 9/11 and a post 9/11 in terms of the way
Totally.
The world works. And I think we're definitely seeing fractures that existed along class and racial lines growing even wider. And just in terms of behavior, I think people are starting to rethink the way that they do certain things, in terms of even just basic things like shopping, or I never would have thought twice about going into a coffee shop and spending an hour there. But I think now these kind of behaviors are not post pandemic. Like I think everyone needs to rethink how much time they spend in a social space and why, and also think about the people who make our respective lifestyles possible.
Totally. Well, and let me ask you this also, because I mean, in Southeast Asia, you've been exposed to more serious pandemics over the last several decades, right? And a lot of the previous outbreaks didn't have significant impacts in the West, really, right? So I think that made people somewhat complacent, even though anyone who's been writing about existential risk or anything of that capacity has sort of pegged a dangerous pandemic as something that's pretty much inevitable, given the interconnectedness between our different countries, and just the statistical likelihood of some crazy virus jumping from one species into humans. And that again, in the West, we've been somewhat lucky in that, like, okay, these outbreaks periodically happen. They're often centered in Asia or in Africa, and then they kind of stop, and it doesn't really impact our day-to-day too much. So, in Southeast Asia, you've actually seen some of that stuff change what you can and can't do. And this is the first time that this has really happened to us in the West. So I wonder if we'll learn and potentially be more prepared, like we've seen a lot of Asian countries. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think over the long term, as you mentioned, we have experienced these kinds of virus outbreaks in Southeast Asia. Specifically in 2003, we had both SARS and the bird flu within 6 months of each other. And in addition to that, we also have regular outbreaks of dengue fever. Dengue is not a virus, but it does have the potential to hospitalize people, and it also affects people with pre-existing immune disorders. And so I can say that in a strange way, Malaysians were already prepared for something like this to happen, just because it's a country where we're regularly advised to have face masks and not to venture outside for various reasons, including, not limited to outbreaks. Sometimes it has to do with the air quality and, forest fires causing what's called around here the haze, which is basically just our cities are choked with smoke during certain periods of the year. And so it wasn't unusual to get onto a train and see almost everyone wearing a face mask. I think in terms of, it's almost a generational thing. I think if you grow up in the time after this, I think your perspective is different from the people who are experiencing this for the first time. And I think maybe some of the stubbornness that we're seeing towards embracing some of the social distancing measures and some of the quarantine measures that are necessary are actually coming from older generations who are a little bit set in their way and also don't really have experience with this kind of outbreak, and so are not taking it as seriously as they should have. I don't know. Yeah.
Sure.
The other thing is, as somebody who spent most of his life in the region and has seen not just these outbreaks, but also been through a few revolutions, there is a period of adjustment where you live through the fear and uncertainty, but as a whole, everyone is really just looking forward to a return to normalcy and whatever form that takes. So, if certain social distancing measures end up being long term, or if the predictions are accurate that events like concerts and sporting events that require basically mass gatherings of that sort are postponed indefinitely, people will adapt to that, and that will become our new normal. And what that means for musicians and touring acts, I don't know, but I guess we'll see within the next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I agree with you about the new normal, right? I mean, at this point, if you think about what was I doing 8 weeks ago, it's like that was an entirely different world, and it's sort of shocking how quickly you adapt to the different regulations and wearing a mask when you're outside, and how much you bristle at people who get close to you in the grocery store. You're like, what are you doing? Like, get away from me, right? And you're like, oh, this is just my life now. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and it's also, I think, I don't know, I think certain, like, I wouldn't describe Malaysia as being a place where there's a lot of social interaction between strangers anyways. And so it's not a big, everyone is slightly wary of everyone else, even at the best of times. And so a lot of the social distancing guidelines aren't a big change for people in that sense. But when you're living in a big metropolitan city and everyone is packed together, and public transport requires everyone to share a very small space, large groups of people to share a very small space. And as you said, the grocery stores, I mean, there's only so much social distancing you can do in a shopping aisle, right?
Yeah, totally.
Control from mutilation.
Are you finding it to be a big adjustment?
It's interesting in that so for me, I own a CrossFit gym in downtown Chicago, and for the last several weeks, I've actually been busier by far than normal, just based upon a lot of the adjustments that we're trying to do, right? Trying to move a lot of our coaching and classes online, trying to apply for the various small business loans that are being put out, just doing a lot more communication with members and coaches and everything like that to sort of keep people aware of what we're doing and what our plans are. So I've actually been a lot busier. I mean, I normally work a lot, but I've sort of resumed, an unhealthy level of work where I'm like, man, this is not necessarily sustainable for me to be doing as much typing and meeting and all that kind of stuff that I've been doing. So that's been a bit of a challenge, but I certainly think that there are times in any sort of business ownership where the best thing to do is to kind of be like a crazy reactive firefighter who's just sort of like running around and trying to do the best that you can. And I'm hoping to be able to kind of move out of that again, since I'll be surprised if we're just open for business again anytime soon. I don't think it's implausible that we'll be allowed to resume some activity sometime soon. But, I think that you mentioned this previously, and I'm not sure if we were recording or not, but I think it's certainly likely that we're going to see a lot of restrictions for a while, and certainly plausible that we'll kind of see loosening of restrictions and then tightening of restrictions back and forth for a little while too. So, just trying to set up as much as possible for my business to be able to handle that. And I mean, and for the members who we serve to be able to continue to work out and prioritize fitness, and honestly for our coaches to be able to continue to make a living, right? Because for a lot of folks in the fitness industry, it's not a very lucrative spot to be. And so for those people, they've purposefully taken a pay cut relative to what they could be making doing something else in order to try to help people and kind of follow their passion. And so I have a lot of concern for them of like, okay, how can we set this up where you're able to continue making a living doing something that you love that's actually a pretty valuable job, but unfortunately is not always the most lucrative thing to be doing.
So what's the answer to that problem? Obviously, gyms around the world are shut down. How do you continue to operate a gym during a pandemic?
Yeah, so I mean, for us right now, I mean, a lot of gyms in the CrossFit space in particular are doing something similar where we're offering workouts for people to do at home that they can do. We loaned out all of our equipment, so our members have all of our dumbbells and medicine balls and rowers and things like that. And we've essentially converted the gym to sort of being run online, right? We're running classes through Zoom a few times a day. Programming is written for people to be able to do at home. We're trying to put together as many coaching options as possible. So we have workshops throughout the week, and we're also setting up different things where members are able to interact with coaches and get accountability and individualized feedback and all that sort of stuff. So we're just trying to kind of like, port a lot of the stuff that we're doing over into an online space, which I think has actually worked reasonably well. But, again, I think it's something that people are kind of happy to do for 4, 6, maybe 8 weeks. But I think the life cycle on that is going to be, people are going to get kind of burned down on it at some point. So I do think we need to be a little bit creative and figure out, okay, how can we offer something that is really, really valuable and is the right solution for people who are potentially, going to be at home for a longer time? And what does that look like? Because again, I think that even if and when restrictions are loosened, that it's not just going to be like, cool, we're back to normal. We're going to behave as if it's, November 2019 before that fateful day when a bat decided to land on a pangolin or whatever. And, it's not going back to that. So we need to think about what kind of options are potentially available for continuing to offer fitness to people who might be skittish about going into a public space with a bunch of different people, who might be a little bit weird about sharing equipment with folks, who may want to pay more for more individualization and to not have to be around other people. And, we need to figure out, okay, what does that actually look like, and what sort of helps people that aren't going to necessarily want to just go back to the way things were.
Yeah, I know a lot of gyms are offering training over Zoom or video chat and things like that. I train at a martial arts gym, and it was funny
cool.
because people people were posting, I feel especially bad for my coaches because a lot of them traveled from different parts of the world, like Brazil and the Philippines and France, to coach at this MMA gym, and obviously they can't go home and they also can't pursue their livelihood. So it's
Sure.
it's a tough space for them to be in. But our gym is offering classes over Zoom, which is, imagine a jiu-jitsu class over Zoom where everyone's in one of those little Brady box squares from the video chat.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Except they're all wearing their jiu-jitsu uniforms.
Totally.
Yeah, so I mean, personally, it's not something I'm pursuing right now. I am doing a lot of like prison style workouts with just like push-ups and crunches, and I turn my laundry bag into a punching bag, and I'm
Right.
trying to stay fit that way.
Yeah, I do think that martial arts is in a tougher spot than other fitness programs, right? That again, if anyone's going to be skittish about something, it's already kind of weird to have your face in someone's armpit for an hour for pleasure, And I think that might be something that people are a little slower to go back to than doing some burpees and squat cleans or whatever.
I mean, if there was a time to learn Tai Chi, it would be now, right? Like, you don't even.
Yeah, sure, totally.
Don't even have to touch anyone. Just use the force.
Yeah.